Okay, everybody, it's time once again for the broom wagon. A hectic and spectacular week of racing. Belgium, Spain, and Italy, amongst other places. The good, the bad, and the ugly from all that. Neutral zone news, musings, tweet of the week. I can tell you, Peter Sagan back on top. All of that up on the broom wagon. All right, everybody, the good, the bad, and the ugly from Volta, Catalunya. Alejandro Valverde continuing to stomp the ever-loving guts out of the peloton. Catalunya, a very tough race. It's just all mountains. It's so miserable. Oftentimes interrupted by weather, and this year no exception. But Valverde, check this out. He's 37. He's already won a pile of races this year. Won the GC, won the mountain competition, and won 2 stages in Catalunya. So Valverde looking good, shall we say, looking phenomenal before the Ardennes Classics. I picked him to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège earlier in the year, at the start of the year, and nothing he's done since then has done anything except bolster my belief that Alejandro Valverde will be virtually unbeatable in Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So time will tell. Also to the good, Thomas de Gendt goes into breakaways, almost always gets caught, but Thomas de Gendt, another stage win to add to his numerous wins. He's really, really powerful. He doesn't have the greatest sprint, is not the best climber. He's not a classic specialist, but when he gets in the breakaway and the peloton, for whatever reason, doesn't close it down, he wins quite often. Young rider to make note of, Max Schachmann from the Quick Step squad, got himself a stage win. Jarlinson Pantano continuing the good season for the Trek Segafredo squad, also a stage win. Quick Step, oh my God. We'll get to that in a minute, but we're absolutely flying this year so far. Simon Yates, good stage win. Bad, his brother, Adam, crashed and broke his pelvis. Woo! A little bit of the ugly for Adam Yates. So, Simon, good luck, great stage win. Dropping the hammer on the field in the finale and pedaling away for a solo win. But bad luck to his brother Adam, twin brother, by the way. Adam Yates, broken pelvis, luckily not displaced, so apparently won't require surgery. Just a fairly long recuperation prospect. I mean, the pelvis, man, just broken pelvis, just horrible, never sounds good. Also a little bit of ugly for Egan Bernal. I want to say a year ago, I started to herald the praises of the young Colombian, Egan Bernal. Luis Angel Lopez or Egan Bernal, one of those guys will be the first Colombian to win the Tour de France. And Egan Bernal, incredible talent. Races for Sky, 21 years old, broken clavicle and scapula, it looks like. And surgery possible. They're going to make an announcement, hopefully in the next couple of days. But regardless, hopefully Egan Bernal has a quick recovery. Huge future for that young Colombian. Great climber and can hold his own in the time trials. Maybe the biggest star of the youngest riders in professional cycling and an up-and-comer. The bad also, Dan Martin crashed, but remounted and got to the finish line. Same crash, I believe, as Egan Bernal, so some more bad luck for Dan Martin. Had a pretty tough Paris-Nice and was riding pretty well in Catalunya, not exactly at his best, but Dan Martin remounts to finish, so just a little bit of bad luck. Quick Step, oh man, Nicky Terpstra, E3 Harelbeke, a very tough one-day race, uses a lot of the same roads as Tour of Flanders, Ghent-Wevelgem, all of the classics from Belgium that we're so used to in professional cycling. And Terpstra, it's just an absolutely dominant performance by the Quick-Step team, who, by the way, up until Harelbeke, 6 for 6 in Belgian racing this year so far. So Quick-Step is crushing. Elia Viviani, a couple of those wins for the Quick-Step squad in Belgium. We'll get to Elia in a moment. But the bad and the ugly, a massive pile-up about halfway through, covered the road, just complete blockage, pretty close to the front. Most of those riders never came back to contest the rest of Harelbeke. Quick-Step was, it was pointed out that they might have eased up a little bit, and allowed some regrouping of the peloton after that huge pileup. But they were already in stun mode, opening up the account for the team on the day early, and that worked to their favor. And Terpstra, it looked like he might get caught a few times in the finale, in the closing miles, but he had enough strength to hold off the charging field, and he had teammates in the chase. So the followers in a no-win situation. Chase Terpstra, bring up his teammates, and lose. Not Chase Terpstra and lose for sure. But the Quick-Step team just showing how dominant they've been so far this year. You know, Tom Bonen's retired now, and everybody that might not have had a chance in recent years taking their opportunity and coming up with huge success. The ugly, Marco Haller.
This looks bad.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty okay, but there's still some pieces of carbon in there. But I'm okay. I hope all the other riders are also okay, but I just can say I've never seen so many broken bikes. I think there are 100,000 euros gone.
Nobody wants to pull carbon fiber fragments out of any part of their body after a big crash. So that shows you the high speed, the desperation, and the splintering bikes in that pileup. So a quick recovery to Marco Haller, everybody, and be careful. Be careful out there. So dangerous. We didn't have fragmenting carbon fiber pieces to worry about when I was racing. We had plenty of other dangers, but that thankfully was not one of them. I haven't seen that before. That I've seen many carbon bikes just in splinters, but not in the flesh of the pro athletes up until now. But I'm sure it happens in other races. Anyways, everybody, be careful out there. Coppi Bartali, stage race in Italy. 4 days, 5 stagers. There's a split stage on on day one. Not my favorite. You know, add a day, give the guys a break. 2 stages in 1 day, never fun. But stage number 1 came down to a 2-up sprint featuring Lawson Craddock and Pascal Inkhorn. I can tell you that Lawson got second on the stage, but last in the sprint for the win. But the good news is for Lawson Craddock, after a very tough 2017, back on track, racing well. Let's hope that Lawson gets the results that he's capable of throughout the year. I think he was poorly coached, and last year did way too much volume and intensity in the offseason and was glued to the ground in 2017. So it's great to see Lawson back in the front where he belongs. And best of luck to Lawson Craddock. I'm sure we'll be following him throughout the year. Bauke Mollema, along with Jarlinson Pantano from the Trek squad, getting wins this week in the racings. Awesome to see how well Trek is doing so far this year. And I forgot to mention Pantano. Worked for Alberto Contador all of last year. Was great. Maybe the strongest teammate throughout the year for anybody was Jarlinson Pantano. Now that he's racing for himself again, comes up with a stage win in Catalunya. But good riding by Team Sky so far. Diego Rosa by Trek, excuse me. Diego Rosa from Team Sky got the overall in the Coppi Bartali, helped in no small part by the team time trial won by Team Sky. BMC not there, racing in Coppi Bartali this week, but Team Sky, Mitchelton, one of the other better team time trial squads along with BMC. BMC the best. but Team Sky right up there, oftentimes able to come close and at least give their GC riders a chance to continue to be competitive, which a lot of times in the team time trials nowadays, your GC is over if you're on certain teams after the team time trial. And that's got a lot to do with the disparity in team budgets and also the focus that the team has and the type of riders that they have. But the team time trials coming back to the Tour de France. So this is a good bolster to the confidence of Team Sky. Great to have a win in the team time trial going into the very pivotal team time trial in this summer's Tour de France. Who's on their team remains to be seen. We'll get to that in a little bit in the Neutral Zone News, or perhaps the Musette. I guess it's in the Musette Musings. But Chris Lawless, also from Sky, with a stage win, and Jan Tratnik from CCC winning the time trial. Got a couple of bad news items to report. Koen Bouwman from Lotto Jumbo crashing. Take a look at this. Whew. Looks like he tried to straighten it out a little bit, stand it up, come out of the lean, and then go back into the lean. And didn't look like he was injured. Popped back up on his feet and got going again. So a nice slide into third, but just anything can happen, and your fortunes can change in the blink of an eye in professional cycling. Edwin Avila from the Movistar squad. Take a gander at this. First group out on the road. Oh, man. It's like fourth wheel. I mean, pilot error all the way. Takes down a couple of other riders. And come on, everybody. Let's watch where we're going. I know it's hard. You get cross-eyed. You get asphyxiated. It's more difficult, but you can't do well if you can't stay upright. That's just a basic fact of professional cycling. But it's pretty amazing that a lot of guys continue to struggle with that memo. But not to disparage Edwin Avila in any way. It happens. It happened to me all the time. So I'm right there with you. All right, everybody. Next up, Gent-Wevelgem, the good to the brilliant. Peter Sagan comes up with another smashing win, third title at Gent-Wevelgem, beating Elia Viviani, who had, I think, 3 teammates in the final group in Gent-Wevelgem. And, I mean, Sagan was the fastest by far. Demar was third. Viviani and Demar both on great form this year. And Peter Sagan, for the first time that I can remember, didn't do all the work in the finale. He definitely has more to contend with than a lot of his direct competitors. Oftentimes, and you can see this when you watch the races consistently, the leaders, when they come together and they start racing the finale, will oftentimes look to Peter Sagan to do the brunt of the work to chase whatever attack goes off the front. Vincenzo Nibali won Milano-San Remo because, in part, because Peter Sagan did not chase in that circumstance. If Peter had chased, then Nibali does not win Milano-San Remo. So in Gent-Wevelgem this year, this is what happened. Peter didn't do any more work than anybody else. He didn't do any less, but he didn't do 2 or 3 times more work, and that was the difference. And once he lit it up, came right past Demar in the blink of an eye and was gone. Viviani boxed in a little bit, and Viviani understandably devastated at the finish line. He had the strength in numbers, Philippe Gilbert, Nicky Terpstra working for him, Yves Lampaert, and I can imagine that would be heartbreaking to not be able to deliver. Quick Steps had some great success already this year, and for my money, it's kind of nice to see Peter Sagan not be obliged to chase down every single attack, every single breakaway at the end of a big race, Gent-Wevelgem. And it's going to be really intriguing to see how the rest of the classics play out and how the people race against Peter Sagan. And that's been the defining characteristics in a lot of the races that he's done. And now that he's won a big race and everybody remembers how spectacular he is as a bike racer, it might be much tougher for Peter to win the Tour of Flanders. But we will see. Quick Step on fire. Peter Sagan, Greg van Avermaet, Phil Gilles, Philippe Gilbert, and a whole host of others. Watch for a preview of Tour of Flanders in a few days, hopefully. But Viviani has already got some great wins, like I said, this year. So he was very upset to lose, and understandably so, but plenty more chances for Elia Viviani to win, and he has been smoking hot this year with lots of great wins. I think he's the winningest cyclist so far this year. But Quick Step and Peter Sagan on fire so far this year. Sagan, you know what I love most about Peter Sagan is his interviews. Win, lose, or draw, they're always entertaining. They're always cryptic, and I can't take my eyes away from Peter Sagan's interviews at the end of these races. It's great. I think it seems like a lot of times he's a little standoffish with the interviewers, and you're just waiting for something. But once he gets around to explaining, as long as he understands the questions, very articulate, has a great, he has a photographic memory almost of what happens in the sprints and in the races, and what everybody else is doing, not just what he's doing and his teammates are doing. So it's great to hear his interviews. Love it. Okay, everybody, next up is the Neutral Zone News. Mark Cavendish in the Neutral Zone News dimension data telling us no permanent damage from his broken rib and injured ankle in his rather harrowing crash in Milano-San Remo, and he should be back up to full speed training currently and trying to recuperate from 3 races, 3 crashes in a row. And let's hope that's the end of the bad luck for Mark Cavendish, and he'll be sprinting for the wins before very much longer. Mark Cavendish, one of the winningest sprinters in the history of professional cycling, closing in on Eddy Merckx's outright record for stage wins in the Tour de France. This year would be absolutely pivotal if he's going to break that record. But the way it's been going so far, it just got to stop crashing in order to win bike races. It's just not. It's worse than the actual moment that it happens. It has a domino effect, and it's much more difficult to get back to the fitness required to win those sprints. And when you look at the sprint fields that we have now, every single sprint is as hard as the World Championships. And young pros like Viviani, Dylan Groenewegen, Caleb Ewan, Alvaro, apparently, another Neutral Zone News item, it's not Hodig, it's Hodge. So thank you, Paul Sherwin, for pointing that out. Alvaro Hodge, a little bit of a spelling error. And at some point, at some race entry somewhere, the G and the E got mixed around, so it's Hodge. But when we think about the sprint fields, it's getting more and more competitive and much more difficult to win. And Mark Cavendish is really going to have his work cut out for him when he's coming back to get to his best and his fastest. But plenty of time to do so before the Tour de France. So best of luck to Mark Cavendish and the Dimension Data Squad in Mark's recuperation and eventual return to the top step of the professional cycling podiums. All right, next up, the Musette Musings. Okay, everybody, in the Musette Musings sky, back in there. Apparently a report coming out of France that the Tour de France may. Now, I tried to confirm this with Team Sky. They said this never happened. They never said anything about this. ASO, the owners of the Tour, but a report saying that ASO may invoke a clause in their charter whereby they can deny the entry of any rider and or his team if they're embroiled in a doping scandal. And that's where Chris Froome and Sky find themselves currently. The chances of it being resolved, apparently, David Leparchant saying, the president of the UCI saying it's unlikely to happen before the Giro. So whether or not the Giro organizers have the same clause, I don't know. I would imagine they would. If we remind ourselves, last year I think it was the Bardiani squad in a week or maybe 2 weeks or maybe less before last year's Giro had 2 riders positive simultaneously. Those riders obviously were not allowed to race and are serving suspensions, but the team was allowed to race. So the Giro, plenty of experience with doping controversies, and how they treat the Froome situation will be very interesting, because it doesn't look like it'll be resolved by them. An interesting sidebar: Froome was told he had given a urine sample with twice the allowed amount of salbutamol in it during the morning of the time trial at the World Championships, and didn't say anything. I mean, at that point it was confidential, but went ahead and negotiated with the organizers of a Giro for what I would imagine to be a lot of start money. And Chris has never used the Giro before to prepare for a win in the Tour de France. He's raced the Giro before. Maybe we'll revisit that at some point. But he was negotiating with the Giro organizers while he knew this maybe would be resolved in his favor and never see the light of day, but maybe went against him, even if we never found anything about it until then. And he would serve a suspension of who knows how long. And who knows what the determination would have been or would be. It has been leaked in the meantime. And I wonder if the Giro organizers have not gone back to Team Sky and Chris Froome and had some further negotiations. And for the team that's all about transparency, doesn't seem transparent. We don't need to know all the gory details, but it would be nice to know how much the Giro offered to pay Chris Froome to race in their event. And let's be honest, if Chris Froome does the Giro, it's a huge amount of publicity for the Giro organizers. So definitely is worth their while to provide Chris with some powerful incentives to do the Giro. Team Sky has never used the Giro to try to prepare for the Tour de France with either Bradley Wiggins or Chris Froome to try to prepare to win the Tour. So I found the announcement last winter to be pretty surprising, that Froome would be doing the Giro and then the Tour. In 2017, if we remind ourselves, and maybe it's a different strategy, Chris Froome at his very best in the Volta, and maybe not quite there at the Tour de France, but for the time being at least, won both. So maybe they have changed their theory of getting ready for the Tour. But wouldn't it be nice to know? And that is up to Team Sky. And if the case is not resolved by the Tour de France, what the fear I think the tour organizers would have, and are perfectly justified in this, is that the controversy will be bigger than the race, and especially the first few days. And if you imagine the resistance of the fans, what they might have for Chris Froome being there, it's pretty formidable, and it's something the Tour de France and the Giro will have to definitely take into considerations as we get closer. But let's hope that the case is adjudicated by then, that it has been resolved one way or another. And the worst case scenario is that it hasn't been resolved before the Tour starts this summer. That would be a disaster. And then we'll see the resolve the UCI actually has in the fight against doping, and ASO, by the way, and the Giro organizers. And if they let Chris Froome slide, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens this summer. All right, everybody, up next, the tweet of the week. Tweet of the week. If you get your bike back, if you travel with your bicycle on an airplane and check your bike, you can't carry it on, at least commercially, as far as I know. And you open your bike bag up, when you get to your destination and it's in pieces, it's been demolished, here's perhaps an answer as to why. There's some heavy-handed baggage handlers, chucking the bikes, much to the chagrin of presumably their owners who are filming the proceedings from their seats on the plane. My bike has not been destroyed by the airlines up until now, but it worries me a little bit traveling with it. Not sure what flight this is or where this transpired, but I think I'm going to invest in some travel insurance for my bicycle. All right, everybody, thanks a lot. Please subscribe. Got some new t-shirts. Might want to check those out. I want to see as many BobkeTV t-shirts as possible when I travel around the country and the globe, commentating on the most beautiful sport in the world. And remember, everybody, bicycle racing is too beautiful to be destroyed by dopers. Okay, everybody, till next time.